A single, piercing note echoes through the grand hall, shattering the silence like glass underfoot. Then, a body crumples, violin in hand, strings still vibrating with unspoken secrets. Welcome to The Shattered Violin, Murder in a Single Note, a Hercule Poirot mystery that twists like a poisoned melody. Grab a cup of tea, settle into your seat, and let the intrigue unfold. If you're hooked already, hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us as we dive into this tale of deception and deduction. Chapter 1. The Symphony of Suspicion. Opulent Royal Concert Hall in London buzzed with anticipation on that fateful evening in 1928, its crystal chandeliers casting a golden glow over the assembled elite. Ladies in shimmering gowns whispered behind feathered fans, while gentlemen adjusted their cufflinks, eyes darting toward the stage where the renowned violinist, Maestro Enrico Rossi, was set to perform his magnum opus, a concerto said to rival the masters. But as the curtains parted and Rossi lifted his priceless Stradivarius, a sense of unease rippled through the air, unspoken yet palpable, like the first distant rumble of a storm. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with his impeccably waxed moustache and piercing grey eyes, sat in a box seat reserved for honoured guests. He had been invited by his old friend, Captain Arthur Hastings, who fidgeted beside him, programme in hand. "Poirot, old chap, isn't this exciting? Rossi's been practising this piece for months. It's called The Eternal Note, meant to evoke the soul's deepest longings." Poirot nodded politely, but his mind was already at work, observing the subtle tensions among the crowd. There was Lady Evelyn Cartwright, the hall's patroness, her diamonds glittering like ice, seated next to her husband, Sir Reginald, whose face bore the strain of recent financial woes. Across the aisle, the young prodigy violinist, Sophia Laurent, watched Rossi with a mix of admiration and envy, her fingers twitching as if yearning for the instrument herself. As the orchestra tuned their instruments, a hush fell over the audience. Rossi stepped forward, his dark hair slicked back, his expression one of intense focus. He raised the bow, and with a single haunting stroke, drew forth a note so pure it seemed to hang in the air, vibrating through every soul present. But then, crack! The note shattered, not in melody, but in chaos. Rossi's eyes widened in shock, his body convulsing as he clutched his throat, the violin slipping from his grasp to crash upon the stage. Splinters flew like accusations, and the maestro collapsed in a heap, lifeless amid the gasps and screams of the horrified crowd. Pandemonium erupted. Ushers rushed forward. The conductor froze with his baton mid-air, and Poirot leaped to his feet with surprising agility for a man of his stature. "Mon Dieu, Hastings, it is murder, most foul!" he exclaimed, his voice cutting through the din like a scalpel. Hastings, ever the loyal companion, paled. Murder? But how, Poirot? He was alone on stage. The detective's eyes gleamed. "Ah, but the method, my friend. It is in the note itself. Observe. No weapon, no assailant. Yet death strikes as surely as a blade." The police arrived swiftly, led by the gruff Inspector Japp, who cordoned off the stage and began barking orders. "Nobody leaves. This looks like poison, maybe in his rosin or the strings." But Poirot, weaving through the chaos with his characteristic poise, knelt beside the body. The violin lay in pieces, its body cracked open like a secret revealed too soon. A faint, acrid scent lingered. Something chemical, perhaps. "Inspector, regardez, the strings. One is tampered with, coated in a substance that, when vibrated, at that precise frequency, releases a toxin into the air, inhaled by the poor Rossi." Japp scratched his head. "Blimey, Poirot, That's diabolical. Who'd do such a thing? Suspects emerged like shadows in the dimming lights. Lady Cartwright, it turned out, had invested heavily in Rossi's career, but rumours swirled of an affair gone sour. Sir Reginald, her husband, had been seen arguing with the maestro backstage just hours before, his face flushed with rage over alleged debts. Then there was Sophia Laurent, the understudy, who stood to inherit Rossi's spotlight, and perhaps his Stradivarius, valued at a fortune. Even the conductor, Maestro Vittorio, harboured a grudge. Years ago, Rossi had stolen his composition ideas, claiming them as his own. Poirot gathered them in the green room, his little grey cells whirring. Mes amis, this is no accident. The murder was orchestrated, pun intended, with precision. The shattered violin holds the key. But we must listen to the silences between the notes. He paced, twirling his moustache. For example, consider the practical tip in deduction. Always examine the victim's last actions. Rossi had tuned his instrument, obsessively that night, insisting on new strings provided by an anonymous donor. Who was that donor? A clue, perhaps, leading to jealousy or revenge. As the chapter of initial suspicions draws to a close, the web of motives tightens, leaving us to wonder, was it love, money, or artistic rivalry that struck the fatal chord? Hold on, for in the next chapter, Poirot delves deeper into the alibis, uncovering lies that resonate like off-key harmonies. Chapter 2. The Alibis Unravelled. The green room of the Royal Concert Hall felt stifling, its velvet curtains and polished mahogany tables absorbing the tension like a sponge. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, his sharp eyes scanning the gathered suspects, each one perched uncomfortably on plush chairs, their faces a gallery of unease. The air still carried the faint echo of chaos from the stage, where Enrico Rossi's body had been discreetly removed by Inspector Japp's men, but the mystery of his death loomed larger than ever. Poirot's polished shoes clicked softly on the floor as he began, his voice calm yet commanding. Mesdames et messieurs, each of you claims innocence, yet one, or more, hides a truth darker than the shadows of this room. Let us examine your alibis, n'est-ce pas? Lady Evelyn Cartwright sat ramrod straight, her gloved hands folded tightly in her lap, the diamonds at her throat catching the lamplight. I was in my box seat, Monsieur Poirot, watching the performance with my husband, she said, her voice clipped, aristocratic. I had no reason to harm Enrico, he was a dear friend. Her eyes flickered briefly to Sir Reginald, who shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tight. Indeed, Sir Reginald muttered, I was with Evelyn the entire time, never left her side. But Poirot noticed the slight tremor in his hand, the way his gaze avoided the detective's scrutiny, as if shielding a wound. Across the room, Sophia Laurent leaned against a wall, her youthful face pale but defiant, her violin case clutched like a shield. I was in the wings, preparing for my own performance later, she said, her French accent softening her words. I admired Maestro Rossi, why would I destroy my inspiration? Yet her fingers drummed nervously on the case, betraying a restlessness that Poirot's keen eyes did not miss. The conductor, Maestro Vittorio, mopped his brow with a handkerchief, his heavy Italian accent thick with indignation. I was at the podium conducting the orchestra. Everyone saw me, hundreds of eyes. This accusation is absurd, his bluster, however, faltered under Poirot's steady gaze, as if the detective could see through the bravado to something fragile beneath. Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. Let us reconstruct the moments before the tragedy. The maestro received new strings for his Stradivarius, delivered anonymously to his dressing room. Who among you had access to that room? A murmur rippled through the group, but no one spoke. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Come now, someone knows something. Silence is a confession of its own. Inspector Japp, hovering near the door, scribbled notes, his face a mix of skepticism and trust in Poirot's methods. "He's right," Japp interjected. "The stage manager says the dressing room was unlocked all afternoon. Any of you could have slipped in." The detective turned to Sophia, whose fingers froze mid-drum. "Mademoiselle Laurent, you were seen near the dressing rooms an hour before the performance, were you not?" Sophia's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. "I was fetching my sheet music. The rooms are close together. It means nothing." Poirot tilted his head, unconvinced. "And you, Maestro Vittorio, you visited Rossi to discuss the tempo of the concerto, oui? A heated discussion, perhaps?" Vittorio's face reddened. "We disagreed on artistry, nothing more. I would never—" He stopped, as if realizing his temper was a trap. Lady Cartwright's composure cracked slightly, her voice sharp. "This is ridiculous! Are you suggesting we're all conspirators?" Poirot smiled faintly, a cat toying with its prey. "Not all, madame, but someone ensured those strings carried death. The toxin, you see, was no ordinary poison. It required knowledge, precision, access." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Sir Reginald coughed, his face ashen. "I'm no chemist, Poirot. I deal in stocks, not poisons." But his eyes darted to his wife, a glance so fleeting yet heavy with meaning that Poirot's moustache twitched with interest. As the interrogations continued, a new figure emerged from the shadows, the stagehand, Thomas Wren, a wiry man with nervous eyes and ink-stained fingers. He claimed to have been adjusting the stage lights during the performance, but his alibi was shaky, supported only by a junior usher who seemed uncertain. "I saw the package of strings delivered," Thomas admitted under Poirot's probing stare. "Didn't think much of it, just left it in Rossi's room." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And who gave you this package, Monsieur Wren?" The stagehand hesitated, then muttered, "Didn't see their face. It was left at the stage door with a note." The room grew colder, suspicion coiling like a snake. Each alibi, though plausible, had cracks, moments unaccounted for, glances that lingered too long. Poirot stepped back, his mind a whirl of connections. The truth, mes amis, is like a melody. It requires harmony, yet here I hear only discord. He turned to Japp. "We must investigate the dressing room, the package, the note. The answer lies in what was not said." As the suspects dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the quiet hall, Poirot lingered, his gaze fixed on the violin case Sophia still clutched. Something about her defiance, her fear, tugged at his instincts. The mystery was deepening, and the next chapter would bring him closer to the silent hand that played the fatal note. Stay tuned, for the trail of clues leads to unexpected places. Chapter 3. The Dressing Room's Secrets. The Royal Concert Hall's backstage corridors were a labyrinth of dim lights and creaking floorboards, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the auditorium. Hercule Poirot navigated the narrow passages with Captain Hastings trailing behind, the air thick with the scent of old wood and stage paint. They reached Enrico Rossi's dressing room, a small space cluttered with sheet music, a cracked mirror, and a velvet-lined case for the shattered Stradivarius. The door, still ajar from the chaos of the evening, creaked ominously as Poirot pushed it open. "Hastings, mon ami, here we stand at the heart of the crime, the room where death was orchestrated, quite literally." Poirot's eyes swept the space, noting every detail with the precision of a conductor reading a score. A small table held a half-empty glass of water, a smudge of lip rouge on its rim catching his attention. "Curious," he murmured. Rossi was not known to wear cosmetics. He moved to the violin case, now empty, its interior stained with a faint, oily residue. Kneeling, he examined the floor, where a crumpled piece of paper lay half hidden beneath a chair. Unfolding it, he revealed a handwritten note in elegant script. "For Enrico, strings to make your music soar. A friend." The anonymity of the signature made Poirot's moustache quiver. A friend indeed. A friend who delivers death. Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, frowned. But who could have left this? The stagehand, Thomas Wren, said he didn't see the sender. Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the paper's edge. The ink is fresh, the paper fine, expensive. This was no casual gift. He pocketed the note, his gaze shifting to a small vial tucked behind a stack of music sheets. Holding it to the light, he saw traces of a clear liquid inside, its cap slightly askew. Mon Dieu, Hastings, this may be the vessel of our poison. We must have it analysed. Inspector Japp burst into the room, his face flushed from running. Poirot, the coroner's initial report is in. Rossi died of a rare neurotoxin, fast-acting, likely inhaled. Matches your theory about the strings. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Bon. But the question remains, who had the knowledge to procure such a substance? Japp scratched his chin. Could be anyone with access to a chemist or money to buy one off. Lady Cartwright's got the funds, and Sir Reginald's been dodging creditors. Maybe he needed Rossi out of the way. Poirot moved to the mirror, noticing a faint scratch on its frame, as if someone had leaned against it in haste. Or perhaps Mademoiselle Laurent, the ambitious prodigy, sought to eliminate her rival. She was near this room, no? Hastings nodded eagerly. And Maestro Vittorio, he's got a temper. Could have slipped in here after their argument. Poirot held up a hand. Patience, Hastings. We must not leap to conclusions. The dressing room tells a story, but we need more chapters. A soft knock interrupted them. Thomas Wren, the stagehand, stood in the doorway, his cap twisted in his hands. Beg pardon, sir, but I remembered something. I saw a woman near the stage door when I picked up that package. She was in a cloak, face hidden, but her gloves, fancy, like Lady Cartwright's. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Merci, Monsieur Wren. Your memory is most helpful. As the stagehand scurried off, Poirot turned to Japp. We must speak with Lady Cartwright again. Her alibi with her husband is too perfect, too rehearsed. As they left the dressing room, Poirot paused at a small photograph pinned to the wall. A younger Rossi, arm in arm with a smiling Sophia Laurent, both holding violins. The warmth in their expressions contrasted sharply with the cold ambition Poirot had sensed in her earlier. A past connection, perhaps, he mused aloud. Hastings shrugged. Could be nothing, Poirot. Just colleagues. But Poirot shook his head. In murder, Hastings, nothing is ever just anything. The corridor seemed to close in as they walked away, the weight of the mystery pressing down. The vial, the note, the scratched mirror, all pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit. Poirot's mind churned, connecting threads invisible to others. Lady Cartwright's mysterious presence, Sophia's hidden history with Rossi, and the elusive toxin pointed to a deeper motive, one buried in the shadows of envy or betrayal. The next chapter would peel back another layer, drawing Poirot closer to the silent hand that struck the deadly note. Chapter 4. The Lady's Hidden Heart. The Royal Concert Hall's private lounge was a sanctuary of opulence, its walls adorned with gilded portraits of musical legends, their painted eyes seeming to follow Hercule Poirot as he entered. The room was dimly lit, the heavy drapes drawn to keep out the grey London afternoon, casting long shadows across the polished parquet floor. Lady Evelyn Cartwright sat on a velvet settee, her posture regal, but her fingers betraying a nervous twist of her pearl necklace. Poirot, with his meticulous black suit and gleaming patent shoes, stood before her, his grey eyes sharp as a hawk's. Captain Hastings hovered near the door, his notepad open, while Inspector Japp leaned against a marble fireplace, arms crossed, his skepticism barely concealed. The air crackled with unspoken questions, the weight of the murder pressing down like a storm about to break. Madame Cartwright, Poirot began, his voice smooth yet piercing. You have told us you were in your box seat with your husband during Maestro Rossi's performance. Yet, a witness places a woman in fine gloves, much like those you wear, near the stage door when the fatal strings were delivered. Can you explain this? Lady Evelyn's lips parted slightly, her composure faltering like a missed note in a symphony. Monsieur Poirot, I assure you, I was nowhere near the stage door. I was with Reginald, as he confirmed. Her voice held a practiced calm, but her eyes darted to the side. A flicker of fear Poirot noted with interest. He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, the click of his heels rhythmic on the floor. Let us consider, madame, the nature of your friendship with Maestro Rossi. It is said you were his patroness, yes? A generous benefactor, investing in his concerts, his tours. But rumours, oh, how they swirl like notes in the air, suggest a closeness beyond mere patronage. Lady Evelyn's face flushed, her gloved hand tightening on her necklace until a pearl snapped free, rolling across the floor like a tiny confession. How dare you imply such a thing? She snapped, but her indignation wavered, her breath uneven. Enrico was a genius, nothing more. I supported his art. Poirot stopped pacing, his gaze locking onto hers. And yet, madame, genius often inspires passion, and passion, betrayal. Did you know of Rossi's past with Mademoiselle Sophia Laurent? A photograph in his dressing room suggests they were once close, perhaps rivals, perhaps more. Did this knowledge wound you? Lady Evelyn's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly, lifting her chin. I knew of Sophia. She was his student years ago, nothing more. If you seek scandal, look to her. She was always lurking, envious of his success. Hastings scribbled furiously, glancing at Poirot, who seemed unmoved by her deflection. Let us turn to the stage door, Poirot continued. The stagehand, Thomas Wren, described a woman in a cloak, her face hidden. But gloves, madame, fine silk, embroidered, like those you wear, are not so common. And the note with the strings, written in elegant script, matches the stationery found in your own writing desk, does it not? He produced the crumpled note from his pocket, holding it delicately as if it were a venomous creature. Lady Evelyn's face paled, but she shook her head. Many use such paper, Monsieur Poirot. You cannot prove it was mine. Inspector Japp stepped forward, his voice gruff. We're checking the stationery now, Lady Cartwright, and we've got the vial from the dressing room at the lab. Traces of that neurotoxin, just as Poirot suspected. If your fingerprints are on it, you'll have some explaining to do. Lady Evelyn's hands trembled, but she drew herself up, her voice icy. You waste your time, Inspector. I loved Enrico's music, not the man. If anyone had motive, it's my husband. Reginald despised him, thought he was bleeding us dry. Poirot's moustache twitched, his mind racing. Merci, madame. Your candour is illuminating. But one question remains. Why did you visit Rossi's dressing room yesterday afternoon? A maid saw you leaving, her testimony quite clear. The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Lady Evelyn's lips quivered, then pressed into a thin line. I went to wish him luck, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. A simple courtesy. I left immediately. Poirot tilted his head unconvinced, and left behind a glass with lip rouge, perhaps. A curious detail for a simple courtesy. As they left the lounge, Hastings whispered, Do you believe her, Poirot? She's hiding something but murder. Poirot's eyes gleamed in the dim light. She hides much, mon ami, but whether it is guilt or shame we shall see. Her husband, Sir Reginald, must now face the same scrutiny. His hatred for Rossi burns like a slow fire. They stepped into the corridor, where a faint draught carried the distant sound of a violin being tuned, a ghostly reminder of the night's tragedy. Lady Evelyn remained on the settee, her face a mask of defiance, but her hands betrayed her, clutching the broken necklace as if it could hold her secrets together. Poirot's little grey cells hummed, piecing together the fragments, the lip rouge, the stationery, the cloaked figure. Was Lady Evelyn a scorned lover, a betrayed patroness, or merely a pawn in a larger game? The truth was close, but it danced just out of reach, hidden in the silences between her words. The next chapter would turn to Sir Reginald, whose anger might reveal the final note in this deadly composition. Chapter 5. The fire of Sir Reginald's rage. The late afternoon sun cast long, slanted rays through the tall windows of the Royal Concert Hall's administrative office, where Sir Reginald Cartwright sat behind a heavy oak desk, his face a storm cloud of barely contained fury, his broad shoulders strained against his tailored suit, and his knuckles whitened as he gripped a crystal decanter of brandy, pouring a generous measure into a glass. Hercule Poirot stood before him, his small frame radiating quiet authority, while Captain Hastings lingered near a bookshelf, eyeing the cluttered ledgers that hinted at Sir Reginald's troubled finances. Inspector Japp stood by the door, his presence a silent reminder of the law's watchful eye. The room hummed with tension, the air thick with the unspoken weight of Enrico Rossi's murder. "Monsieur Cartwright," Poirot began, his voice soft but cutting, "your wife has painted you as a man with a grudge against Maestro Rossi. She claims you despised him, believed he was draining your fortune. Is this true?" Sir Reginald's eyes flashed, his jaw clenching as he slammed the glass down, brandy sloshing onto the desk. "Despised him? That's putting it mildly, Poirot. The man was a leech, charming my wife into funding his every whim, concerts, tours that blasted Stradivarius. He cost me thousands." His voice boomed, echoing off the wood-panelled walls, but Poirot remained unruffled, his moustache barely twitching. "Thousands, you say?" Poirot mused, pacing slowly, his polished shoes silent on the thick carpet. "And yet you attended his performance, sitting beside Lady Evelyn, applauding politely. Why, if you harboured such resentment?" Sir Reginald snorted, leaning back in his chair, his face flushed. "For appearances, man. Evelyn insisted we support the arts, keep up our status. But I knew Rossi was trouble, always whispering in her ear, turning her against me." His words dripped with bitterness, and Hastings exchanged a glance with Japp, both sensing the raw edge of jealousy beneath the anger. Poirot stopped, his grey eyes piercing. "Let us speak plainly, monsieur. You were seen arguing with Rossi backstage hours before his death. Witnesses describe a heated exchange, raised voices, threats. What was said?" Sir Reginald's gaze dropped to the desk, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm. "I told him to stay away from my wife," he muttered. He laughed, said I was paranoid, that Evelyn's money was for his music, not him. I lost my temper, grabbed his collar maybe, but I didn't kill him. His voice cracked, a flicker of desperation breaking through his bluster. "Curious," Poirot said, stepping closer. "You claim no knowledge of the poison strings, yet your financial troubles are no secret. Did you perhaps see Rossi's death as a way to stem the bleeding of your fortune, or to reclaim your wife's loyalty?" Sir Reginald's face darkened, his hand tightening into a fist. "You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot. I'm no murderer. If anyone had motive, it's that Laurent girl, Sophia. She was always skulking around Rossi, hungry for his fame." Poirot tilted his head, noting the deflection. "And yet, monsieur, you had access to the dressing room. A man of your means could procure a rare toxin, non?" Japp stepped forward, holding up a notebook. "We've got something else, Poirot. The lab found traces of the same neurotoxin in a bottle of brandy from Rossi's dressing room. Same brand as this one." He nodded toward the decanter on Sir Reginald's desk. The man froze, his eyes darting to the crystal bottle. "That's preposterous," he sputtered. "Half the gentry drink this brand. It proves nothing." But his voice wavered, and Poirot's eyes gleamed, catching the scent of fear. As Poirot examined the desk, he noticed a ledger half open, its pages marked with red ink. Debts, losses, desperate scribbles. "Your finances, Monsieur Cartwright, tell a story of ruin. Did Rossi's demands push you to the edge?" Sir Reginald stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I've had enough of this. I didn't touch Rossi, and you've no proof otherwise." His outburst hung in the air, but Poirot remained calm, his mind weaving connections, the brandy, the argument, the ledger's damning numbers. As they left the office, Hastings whispered, "He's got a temper, Poirot. Could he have done it?" Poirot's lips curved slightly. "Anger, mon ami, is a powerful motive, but it is sloppy. Our killer is precise, calculated. Sir Reginald's rage may blind him, but it may also hide another's cunning. They stepped into the hall, where the faint hum of the concert hall's organ drifted, a mournful note that seemed to underscore the growing web of lies. The investigation was far from over, and the next chapter would turn to Sophia Laurent, whose quiet ambition might conceal a darker melody. Chapter 6. The Prodigy's Shadow. The Royal Concert Hall's rehearsal room was a stark, echoing space, its bare walls lined with mirrors that reflected the solitary figure of Sophia Laurent. She stood in the centre, her violin tucked under her chin, drawing slow, mournful notes from the strings as if coaxing secrets from the instrument. Hercule Poirot watched her from the doorway, his small frame almost invisible in the shadows, his grey eyes sharp with curiosity. Captain Hastings stood beside him, clutching his notepad, while Inspector Japp lingered near a piano, his impatience evident in the tap of his foot. The air was heavy with the scent of rosin and old wood, and Sophia's music seemed to weave a spell, fragile, yet laced with something unspoken. "Mademoiselle Laurent," Poirot said, stepping forward, his voice cutting through the final note like a blade. Sophia lowered her violin, her dark eyes wary but composed, her youthful face framed by a cascade of chestnut curls. "Monsieur Poirot, I was practicing. Is there something you need?" Her French accent was soft, but there was a steel beneath it, a defiance that intrigued the detective. He clasped his hands behind his back, his mustache twitching slightly. "Oui, mademoiselle. I need the truth. Your presence near Maestro Rossi's dressing room, your past with him. These things sing a melody of suspicion." Sophia's fingers tightened on her bow, her gaze flickering to the mirrors as if seeking an escape in her own reflection. "I told you I was fetching sheet music. As for Enrico, he was my teacher once, years ago in Paris. Nothing more." Poirot tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. "And yet, a photograph in his dressing room shows you together, smiling, violins in hand. A student perhaps, but also a friend or a rival." Sophia's lips parted, then closed, her composure wavering like a string plucked too hard. "We were close once," she admitted, her voice low. "But that was long ago. I came to London to make my own name, not to live in his shadow." Poirot paced slowly, his polished shoes silent on the worn floor. "Your ambition is clear, mademoiselle. You were to perform after Rossi, a chance to step into the spotlight. His death, it seems, has opened that door wider, no?" Sophia's eyes flashed with anger. "You think I killed him for fame? I respected Enrico. He taught me everything. How to feel the music, how to make the strings sing." Her voice cracked, and she turned away, clutching her violin as if it were a lifeline. Hastings whispered to Japp, "She's convincing, but that emotion, could it be guilt?" Japp stepped forward, his tone blunt. "Miss Laurent, we know you were near the dressing room when those poisoned strings were delivered, and we found a letter in Rossi's desk, written by you, begging him to let you play his Stradivarius. Sounds like you were desperate." Sophia's face paled, but she met his gaze. "I wrote that letter months ago. He refused, said the instrument was his soul. I accepted it. I didn't need his violin to prove myself." Poirot raised a hand, silencing Japp. "And yet, mademoiselle, the Stradivarius is now yours by default, is it not? The understudy inherits the maestro's mantle." Sophia's shoulders stiffened, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want it this way. I wanted to earn it." Poirot studied her, noting the tremble in her hands, the way her eyes avoided his. "Let us consider another detail," he said. "The neurotoxin required skill to apply to the strings. Knowledge of chemistry, perhaps. Did you study such things in Paris?" Sophia shook her head fiercely. "I studied music, not poisons. You're twisting everything." But Poirot's gaze lingered, catching the faintest crack in her defiance. As they left the rehearsal room, the sound of Sophia's violin resumed, a haunting melody that followed them into the corridor. Hastings turned to Poirot. "She's hiding something, isn't she? That letter, her anger. It's too much." Poirot nodded, his mind a whirl of connections. Oui, mon ami. Mademoiselle Laurent carries a burden. Grief, ambition, or guilt, we shall see. But the letter and her presence near the dressing room are notes in a larger score. Japp grunted. I'm checking her background. Any chemistry lessons, any grudges. She's not off the hook. The corridor stretched before them, its shadows deepening as the day waned. Sophia's music faded, replaced by the distant hum of the city outside. Poirot's little grey cells buzzed, piecing together the prodigy's past, her letter, her defiance. Was she a grieving student or a cunning opportunist? The truth lay hidden, but the next chapter would turn to Maestro Vittorio, whose own secrets might strike a discordant chord in this deadly symphony. Chapter 7. The Conductor's Discord. The Royal Concert Hall's orchestra pit was a cavern of shadows, its rows of empty chairs and music stands, silent witnesses to the tragedy that had unfolded. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the pit, his small figure dwarfed by the towering backdrop of the stage, yet his presence commanded the space. Captain Hastings hovered nearby, his eyes scanning the rows of instruments, while Inspector Japp leaned against a cello stand, his arms crossed, a cigarette dangling unlit from his lips. Maestro Vittorio, the conductor, stood on the podium, his broad frame hunched, his dark eyes smouldering with a mix of defiance and fatigue. His baton lay discarded on a music stand, as if he had lost all will to lead. The air was thick with the faint scent of polish, and the lingering echo of a rehearsal cut short. Maestro Vittorio, Poirot began, his voice clear and precise, slicing through the heavy silence. You claim you were at the podium, conducting, when Maestro Rossi met his end. Hundreds of eyes saw you, you say. Yet your history with Rossi tells a story of discord, stolen compositions, professional rivalry. Is it not so? Vittorio's face tightened, his thick brows furrowing as he gripped the edge of the podium. Rossi was a thief, he spat, his Italian accent sharp with venom. Years ago he took my work, passed it off as his own. But murder? No, Poirot. I am a musician, not a monster. Poirot paced slowly along the pit's edge, his hands clasped behind his back, his polished shoes glinting in the dim light. A musician, oui, but one with a temper, non? Witnesses recall your argument with Rossi over the tempo of the eternal note. Harsh words, raised voices, perhaps a threat. Vittorio's eyes flashed, but he shook his head. We clashed, yes. He wanted to rush my orchestration, to make it his own spectacle. I told him to respect the score. It was professional, nothing more. His voice was firm, but his hands trembled slightly, betraying a crack in his resolve. Hastings glanced at Poirot, his notepad open. But Maestro, you were in the dressing room area earlier that day, weren't you? The stage manager saw you near Rossi's room. Vittorio's jaw clenched, his gaze dropping to the baton. I went to discuss the rehearsal schedule. Rossi was late, as always. I left when I found he wasn't there. Poirot's moustache twitched, his eyes narrowing. And yet, monsieur, the stagehand, Thomas Wren, saw you lingering near the stage door, where the poisoned strings were delivered. A curious coincidence, is it not? Japp stepped forward, his tone gruff. We've got more, Poirot. The lab confirmed the toxin on the strings matches traces, found in a vial in the prop room, right next to Vittorio's score sheets. Care to explain that, Maestro? Vittorio's face paled, his hands balling into fists. I don't know anything about a vial. I keep my scores there, yes, but anyone could have planted it. His voice rose, echoing in the empty pit. But Poirot remained calm, his gaze piercing. Anyone, monsieur, or someone who knew Rossi's habits, his obsession with new strings. Poirot stepped closer, his voice softening but no less intense. Let us consider your motive, Maestro Vittorio. Rossi's fame overshadowed your own. His theft of your compositions left a wound that festers, oui? With him gone, your work could take centre stage. Vittorio slammed his fist on the podium, the sound reverberating like a drum. I didn't need to kill him to prove my worth. My music speaks for itself. But his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt, a shadow that Poirot's keen mind seized upon. As they left the orchestra pit, the faint creak of the stage above seemed to whisper of hidden truths. Hastings turned to Poirot. "He's got a motive, Poirot, and the means. Those scores were close to the vial." Poirot nodded, his mind a whirl of connections. "Oui, Hastings, but Vittoria's anger is too loud, too obvious. Our killer is subtle, a shadow among shadows." Japp flicked his cigarette away, unlit. "I'm digging into his past, any chemistry knowledge, any grudges that run deeper than he's letting on." The corridor outside the pit was cold, its walls lined with faded posters of past performances, Rossi's face prominent among them. Poirot's little grey cells hummed, piecing together Vittorio's rage, the vial's proximity, the stolen compositions. Was the conductor a wronged artist driven to murder, or a convenient scapegoat for a cleverer mind? The mystery tightened like a violin string, and the next chapter would shift to the stagehand, Thomas Wren, whose nervous eyes might hold the final note of truth. Chapter 8. The Stagehand's Trembling. Truth. The backstage storage room of the Royal Concert Hall was a cluttered maze of props, ropes, and dusty crates, lit by a single flickering bulb that cast jagged shadows across the walls. Hercule Poirot navigated the narrow space with care, his impeccable suit a stark contrast to the grime around him. Captain Hastings followed, nearly tripping over a coiled cable, his notepad clutched tightly. Inspector Japp stood near a stack of old programs, his eyes fixed on Thomas Wren, the wiry stagehand, who stood nervously by a crate, twisting his cap in his ink-stained hands. The air was thick with the scent of sawdust and oil, and a faint hum from the distant auditorium underscored the tension, as if the hall itself held its breath. "Monsieur Wren," Poirot began, his voice calm but sharp, cutting through the dimness like a spotlight. "You are the man who moves in the shadows, unseen yet seeing all. You delivered the package of poisoned strings to Maestro Rossi's dressing room, did you not?" Thomas's eyes darted to the floor, his shoulders hunching. "I told you, sir, I just picked it up from the stage door. Didn't know what was in it, just doing my job." His voice was high, unsteady, like a string plucked out of tune, and Poirot's grey eyes gleamed with interest. Poirot stepped closer, his hands clasped behind his back, his polished shoes silent on the dusty floor. "Your job, oui, but your memory grows clearer with time. You saw a woman in a cloak, fine gloves, perhaps Lady Cartwright, near the stage door. But what else did you see, monsieur? What do you hide behind those nervous eyes?" Thomas swallowed hard, his fingers mangling the cap. "I didn't hide nothing, Mr. Poirot, I swear it. I saw the package, the note, and left it in Rossi's room. That's all." But his gaze flicked to a crate in the corner, a fleeting glance that Poirot's keen senses caught like a hawk spotting prey. Japp moved forward, his tone gruff. "We're not playing games, Wren. We found a scrap of cloth in the prop room, near the vial with the toxin, same fabric as that cloak you mentioned. You're in deep if you're holding out." Thomas's face paled, his hands trembling. "I don't know about no cloth. I move props, fix lights. I don't mess with poisons." Poirot tilted his head, his moustache twitching. "And yet, monsieur, you were near the prop room, the dressing room, the stage door. You are everywhere, yet claim to know nothing. A curious position, no?" Poirot knelt by the crate Thomas had glanced at, lifting a loose board to reveal a small, tattered notebook hidden beneath. He opened it, revealing pages of scrawled notes, times, dates, and cryptic phrases like "strings delivered" and "payment due." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "This is yours, Monsieur Wren?" Thomas's breath hitched, his voice barely a whisper. "It's just my work log. Keeps track of tasks, that's all." But Poirot's finger traced a line. "Meet at midnight, stage door." He looked up, his gaze piercing. "Who did you meet, monsieur? And for what purpose?" Thomas backed against the crate, his eyes wide with panic. "It was just a job. Someone paid me to leave the package. No questions asked." "I didn't know it was poison." Japp seized the notebook, flipping through it. Paid by who, Wren? Give us a name, or you're looking at accessory to murder. Thomas's voice broke, his words tumbling out. I never saw their face. They left money and the package in a bag at the stage door. The note said to deliver it to Rossi, that's all. I needed the cash. Times are hard. Poirot stood, brushing dust from his sleeves, his mind racing. A faceless employer, a bag of money, most convenient, monsieur. But your notebook suggests more than a single task. Were you watching Rossi? Reporting his movements? Thomas shook his head frantically. No, I just did what I was told. But his trembling hands and shifting eyes told a different story, one of fear and secrets buried deep. As they left the storage room, Hastings whispered, He's scared, Poirot. Someone's got a hold on him. Poirot nodded, his little grey cells buzzing. Oui, Hastings. Monsieur Wren is a pawn, but in whose game? The notebook, the payment. These are threads in a tapestry of deceit. Jap tucked the notebook into his coat. I'll have my men trace the money, check the stage door for witnesses. Wren's not telling us everything. The corridor outside was dim, the distant sound of a janitor's broom scraping the floor like a metronome. Poirot's mind wove together the stagehand's fear, the cryptic notebook, the anonymous payment. Was Thomas a mere tool, or did he know more than he admitted? The killer's shadow loomed closer, and the next chapter would unravel the threads of this deadly conspiracy, drawing Poirot nearer to the heart of the silent note. Chapter 9. The web of motives tightens. The Royal Concert Hall's grand foyer was eerily quiet, its marble floors reflecting the soft glow of chandeliers now dimmed in mourning for Enrico Rossi. Hercule Poirot stood near a towering floral arrangement, his small frame almost lost among the opulent surroundings, yet his presence radiated authority. Captain Hastings paced nearby, his brow furrowed, clutching his ever-present notepad. Inspector Japp leaned against a gilded column, his face etched with frustration, as he reviewed a telegram from the police lab. The air carried a faint chill, as if the hall itself mourned the maestro's death, and the weight of the investigation pressed heavily on all three men. Poirot's grey eyes gleamed, his mind weaving the threads of clues into a tapestry that was beginning to take shape. Mes amis, Poirot said, his voice low but commanding. We have suspects, motives and clues, yet the truth remains elusive, like a note played just out of hearing. Let us gather our findings and see where the melody leads. He produced a small notebook of his own, its pages filled with meticulous notes in his precise handwriting. Lady Cartwright with her hidden passions, Sir Reginald, consumed by jealousy and debt, Sophia Laurent, the ambitious prodigy, Maestro Vittorio, nursing old wounds, and Thomas Wren, the nervous stagehand caught in a web not of his making. Each plays a part, but who holds the bow? Hastings stopped pacing, his voice eager. The notebook from Wren's crate, Poirot. It's a goldmine. Those cryptic entries, the midnight meeting. Who was he working for? Japp nodded, holding up the telegram. The lab's got something too. The toxin on the strings and in the vial. It's a rare compound, only available through specialized chemists. We're tracing suppliers, but it points to someone with connections. Maybe money. Poirot's moustache twitched. Bon. And the stationery of the note with the strings matches Lady Cartwright's, though she denies it. The lip rouge on the glass, the scratched mirror, the brandy bottle, all point to a careful plan. Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, his polished shoes clicking softly on the marble. Consider the timing, mes amis. The strings were delivered hours before the performance, yet the toxin was activated only when Rossi played that single piercing note. This suggests not just knowledge of chemistry, but of music, of the precise frequency to release the poison. Japp's eyes widened. Blimey, that narrows it down. Vittorio's a musician, knows the score inside out, and Sophia. She's a violinist, trained by Rossi himself. Hastings added, but Lady Cartwright funded the concert. Could she have studied the music too? Poirot paused by a portrait of Rossi, his painted eyes staring down with a haunting intensity. "There is another thread," he said, his voice softening. "The photograph in Rossi's dressing room, Sophia and Rossi, years ago, their smiles genuine. Yet now she speaks of him with both reverence and resentment. And Sir Reginald's rage. His threats were loud, but was he clever enough to devise such a subtle murder?" Japp grunted. "Don't forget Wren. He's scared, maybe blackmailed. That money he got, it's not pocket change. Someone with means hired him." The detective's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. "Let us hypothesize, mes amis. Suppose the killer is not one, but two. A partnership of motive and opportunity. One with access to the toxin, another with knowledge of the music. Lady Cartwright's wealth could procure the poison, but Sophia's skill could ensure its delivery." Hastings gasped. "A conspiracy, Poirot? That's diabolical." Poirot nodded. "Or perhaps Vittorio, wronged by Rossi, used Wren as a pawn, his scores hiding more than music. We must test these threads." As they moved toward the exit, the foyer's silence was broken by a distant clatter. A janitor dropping a broom, perhaps, but it sent a shiver through Hastings. Poirot remained unfazed, his little grey cells humming. "We are close, mes amis. The clues. Notebook, toxin, stationery, photograph, are notes in a symphony. We must listen for the final chord." Japp tucked the telegram into his coat. "I'm pulling records on all of them. Financials, travel, contacts. Someone's got to crack." The grand doors of the foyer loomed ahead, leading back to the labyrinth of corridors where secrets hid. Poirot's mind churned, the motives of love, jealousy, ambition, and revenge intertwining like a complex fugue. The killer, or killers, had played their hand with precision, but Poirot was closing in, his deduction as sharp as a bow on a string. The next chapter would bring the final confrontation, where the silent note would finally sing its truth. Chapter 10. The Final Note Revealed. The Royal Concert Hall's auditorium was a cathedral of silence, its empty seats stretching into the shadows like rows of silent jurors. Hercule Poirot stood centre stage, his small frame illuminated by a single spotlight, his black suit pristine, his moustache perfectly waxed. Around him, the suspects were gathered in a tense semicircle. Lady Evelyn Cartwright, her diamonds glinting coldly. Sir Reginald, his face taut with suppressed anger. Sophia Laurent, clutching her violin case like a shield. Maestro Vittorio, his broad shoulders slumped. And Thomas Wren, the stagehand, his nervous eyes darting between them. Captain Hastings stood by the wings, notepad in hand, while Inspector Japp leaned against a pillar, his face set in grim anticipation. The air was heavy with expectation, the weight of Enrico Rossi's murder pressing down as Poirot prepared to unveil the truth. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice resonant, filling the vast space. "We have danced a complex waltz of suspicion, each of you playing a note in this deadly symphony. But now, the final chord must be struck. The murder of Maestro Rossi was no accident. It was a masterpiece of cunning, a single note that killed with precision." He paced slowly, his polished shoes clicking on the stage, his grey eyes scanning each face. "Let us unravel the score piece by piece until the killer stands revealed." He turned first to Lady Evelyn. "Madame Cartwright, your patronage of Rossi was generous, but your heart was entangled. The lip rouge on the glass, the stationery matching your own. It suggests a visit to his dressing room, a moment of intimacy perhaps. But your love turned to pain when Rossi's affections strayed to Sophia Laurent." Lady Evelyn's face paled, her gloved hands trembling. "I cared for him, yes, but I did not kill him." Poirot nodded. "Non, madame, you did not. Your role was to provide the means, the wealth to procure the rare neurotoxin. But you were manipulated, your emotions used as a tool." Poirot's gaze shifted to Sir Reginald, whose fists clenched. "Monsieur Cartwright, your jealousy and debts fueled your rage. You argued with Rossi, threatened him, but your anger was too blunt. too loud for this subtle crime. You were a distraction, a storm to mask the true killer's calm. Sir Reginald's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, his eyes burning with frustration. Next, Poirot faced Sophia Laurent, whose youthful face was a mask of defiance. Mademoiselle, your ambition was fierce, your past with Rossi complex. Student, friend, perhaps more. The photograph in his dressing room spoke of warmth. But your letter begging for his Stradivarius revealed envy. You knew his music, his habits, the precise frequency of that fatal note. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. I loved his music, not his death. Poirot's moustache twitched. Oui, but love can twist into obsession. He turned to Maestro Vittorio, whose face was etched with exhaustion. Maestro, your rivalry with Rossi was deep. Stolen compositions, a career overshadowed. The vial near your scores suggested guilt, but your temper is too fiery for such a calculated act. You, too, were a pawn. Vittorio's shoulders sagged, relief mingling with shame. Finally, Poirot faced Thomas Wren, whose trembling hands betrayed his fear. Monsieur Wren, you were the instrument delivering the poisoned strings, paid by an unseen hand. Your notebook recorded tasks, payments, a midnight meeting, but you were no mastermind, merely a tool. Thomas's voice cracked. I didn't know it was poison. Oh, I just took the money. Poirot nodded. Oui, and that money came from the true killer. Poirot stepped back, his voice rising. The murder required two minds, one with wealth and access, another with musical precision. Lady Evelyn provided the toxin. Unknowingly, her stationery used to disguise the note. But the mastermind, the one who coated the strings, who knew the exact note to release the poison, was Mademoiselle Sophia Laurent. A gasp rippled through the group, Sophia's violin case slipping from her grasp. Clattering to the stage, "Non, it cannot be," Sophia cried. But Poirot raised a hand. You studied chemistry in Paris, mademoiselle. A detail you hid. You knew Rossi's obsession with new strings, his tuning rituals. You resented his refusal to share his Stradivarius, his spotlight. You used Lady Evelyn's wealth, manipulating her affection to secure the toxin, and Wren's desperation to deliver it. The note's frequency, unique to the eternal note, was your weapon, a silent killer. Sophia sank to her knees, tears streaming. He wouldn't let me shine. I just wanted my chance. Jap stepped forward, handcuffs ready. Sophia Laurent, you're under arrest for the murder of Enrico Rossi. As she was led away, her sobs echoed in the silent hall. Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice soft. The heart, mon ami, can play a deadly tune when ambition drowns out love. The auditorium seemed to exhale, the tension breaking like a snapped string. As the suspects dispersed, Poirot lingered, his eyes on the shattered remains of Rossi's Stradivarius displayed on a table. The case was closed, the killer unmasked, but the music's loss lingered. Hastings, he said, the truth is a melody that must be heard, no matter how painful. As the spotlight dimmed, Poirot stepped off the stage, the hall falling into darkness. If you've enjoyed this tale of deduction and deceit, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Your support means the world to us. Stay tuned for more mysteries, where the notes of truth always find their way.